Thanks, Laureen. Hi, everybody. I hope you guys really enjoyed Zine's session. I didn't get to catch the whole thing, but clearly everybody was very enthusiastic and interested in using Google Analytics. But of course, data is available in many different shapes and forms, and I want to share from our perspective, of course, from Dattel's perspective. But first and foremost, let me introduce the company a little bit and also myself. There we go. Okay, so as an organization, we're actually a Malaysia-based company, although we have presence in Jakarta and Thailand and Bangkok as well, or basically Indonesia and Thailand. So our focus is on consumer intelligence. What we do is we collect data. So what we ourselves are, we capture the data and we prepare the data in a meaningful fashion on a platform called Voyager. So we're going to show you a little bit as well about what you can do on Voyager. But mainly the whole idea is that we want to make sure that data is accessible to all sorts of businesses, whether they are large agencies like marketing advertising agencies, who have to use our platform as well, and down to the small medium enterprises who may be just learning how to use data and consumer for the very first time. So in terms of my experience, my role as regional head of client engagement basically is this to educate, to guide, to explain how data can be used, what sort of data is available out there, and basically how merchants, especially consumer-related businesses, can really maximize the benefit of using consumer data such as ours. So without further ado, let's talk about customer personas. I don't know whether I can ask questions and have people answer in the chat box, but I would really like it to be a little bit more interactive on my side if that is possible. So please, if you know, and you can type answers in the chat box. Just if I would ask questions lah. Okay,
Noorhaina, you can actually ask them questions and you can get them to reply in the chat. But for them, if they want to ask you questions, they have to put it in the Q&A. By any chance, we are getting a little bit of feedback from our audience that they can't hear you clearly. Do you have a mic by any chance, or something?
I'm afraid not. Hang on a second then. Let me just see. I think that maybe because
sure.
Yeah, it's a little bit loud.
No problem. So while she's off looking for her mic, you guys, once again, welcome to Marketing Fest Asia 2021. If you have any questions for her, leave them in the Q&A. And don't forget to fill out a post-survey form at the end of our event, because you'll be in the running to win an Apple gift card worth 25 USD.
Okay, so I hope this is a little clearer. Yeah. If anybody still has any issues with the audio, please let me know. But basically, let's get started. So I think for some of you, you may already have experience developing customer personas. As anybody already have customer personas for your particular business? Maybe you can share and say yes in the comments, or no if you don't have, if you've never created a customer persona before. So you can just in the chat. Okay, so many of you actually have never created customer personas. Very interesting. So for some of you, especially if you're in the in consumer market, definitely you will need to look, whether it doesn't matter actually whether you're in the B2B or B2C industries. It is advisable for you to have a representation of your target customers or your target audience. And this representation essentially isn't just demographic criteria. Yeah, it's not just about their age, gender, location, or household income, but it has to flesh out details about the customer, sort of like giving a human, it's like sometimes you call it customer avatar, sometimes you call it a buyer persona or a user persona. So there are different versions, but essentially it is really to flesh out that representation of your customer. Now, why it is important? There are several reasons. First of all, let's say, for example, let's say you are in the business of marketing or selling sportswear. Yeah, okay, let's put that as an example. And I'm going to use this example throughout this whole session. So if you're in the business of sportswear, you know that you're not just selling sportswear to people who just want to buy sportswear. People buy sportswear for various reasons. So you may know that usually in the beginning of the year, that's when people start their New Year's resolutions, right? And one of the most popular, most common New Year's resolution is to get fit, right? To get fit, to become healthier, to get in shape, that sort of thing. So you have this group of consumers who may actually be starting out their fitness journey at the beginning of the year. Whether they last throughout the year is a different story, but usually you will have a group of people who will be starting that journey, right? Maybe some of you are like that also. So you can probably identify yourselves as some of these types of sportswear consumers, sportswear customers. Now, then there could be another group as well that may be getting into fitness, not because it's a New Year's resolution, but more for medical or health reasons. So they have to start exercising because their doctor's advising it, because their health condition is deteriorating, or because they need to do it to prevent further injuries and so on and so forth. So that's another set of customers as well. Now, then you could also most clearly, of course, focus on the what we call the fitness junkies, like, or fitness freaks, people who really are dedicated to perfecting their body and perfecting their fitness and performance. So these are the super dedicated type of customers. And then, of course, there are those who use fitness and exercise more as a social bonding experience. So you do it to do activities together with your family members, or to do it as a social activity with friends. So it's not so much about health, but it's more of a way to socialize. So there are all these different reasons and different motivations for customers to want to purchase sportswear. The only thing that ties them together is they want to buy sportswear, but for various reasons. And so you know that already this already indicates that you have several segments of customers that you may be targeting. And if you're already running that business and you have the customer database, you may see that your customers actually fall into a variety of different categories. So they're not all there because of performance wear and because they're all fitness freaks. They're there for different reasons. So segmentation is one of the very important things about why you need to build a customer persona, and you could have multiple customer personas as a result. Okay, so once you've done this kind of segmentation, you realize then that maybe in your customer database, for example, you've been targeting a certain type of customer, but there are also these other customers that you've never considered before who have a different lifestyle. And you realize, there's another opportunity there that you've never considered, but actually could be another revenue generating opportunity. So that new market opportunity also is another reason why you need to look at different customer personas. So assessing the market, assessing whether this is valuable for you and how big that market is this part of building that customer persona. Yeah. Then the other third one is, okay, so you've already established that there are different markets that you want to go after. If you're selling to fitness junkies and also to people who are just starting their New Year's resolution and their fitness journey, you can't sell with the same angle. You've got to do different product positioning. So the performance junkies are looking for performance wear, clothing that's actually going to help them improve their workout. And then the ones who are just starting, maybe a bit more self-conscious about how they look, may actually be more comfortable with clothing that fits all shapes and sizes, for example. So you know that for different segments and different customer personas, their needs are different. Therefore, the product positioning also has to be different. Now, the fourth one, once you've done your product positioning, unless you have a huge infinite marketing budget, you're going to prioritize your marketing spending on perhaps one customer segment first, and then you keep the other segments warm. You don't want to lose them, but you definitely want to keep them interested for when the time is right for you to spend on them next. So you probably will have one major campaign focusing on one segment first because you really want to get this going. And then after that, you then refocus your advertising spending on the next market that you're after, or the next segment that you're after. So usually you have a primary segment and then some secondary or tertiary segments that you're after. Yeah, so prioritizing your marketing spending will become easier when you can identify your customer personas and set the importance and the priorities. Now, the next one is really about communication strategies. Now, when I say communication strategies, they're also driven by different things and how they see themselves. So somebody who's starting a new fitness journey will see themselves very differently from somebody who's already an elite competitor or a fitness freak, for example. So you will see that when you're speaking to them also, it's not just the language that you use, but the lingo and the trigger words that will get them to feel like, yeah, okay, you're speaking my language. You are talking to me because you're really talking about the values that I place as most important. So all consumers, all humans basically, we have different sets of values that we prioritize or that we place higher than others. Yeah, so knowing how the different personas vary in terms of their values will also help you to focus on your communication, because you want to talk to the fitness junkies differently compared to the ones who do it for social reasons, compared to the ones who are doing doing it because they're just trying to get their New Year's resolution done. Yeah. So all these are just some of the most important reasons why you need to do a customer persona. Now, for those of you who don't know how to do it, okay, so, and I know a lot of you have never done this before. The reason when you're building the customer persona, you do have to ask yourselves a couple of questions. Well, not a couple, three main questions, okay? The first main question is, where are you going to get your information to build a customer persona? Yeah? How are you going to find that information? What's your information source? The second question that you need to ask yourself, how many customers would it take? How many people that you talk to, for example, would it take for you to say, okay, this is one customer persona? If you talk to one person, it may not necessarily mean that it represents one customer segment. Yeah, you may need to talk to several people in order to validate that the criteria or the attributes of this person is shared by many others. So let's say, for example, you think there are three customer personas that you're after. Don't talk to just three people. You will need to talk to several more in order to validate that there is enough representation of this type of customer that is worth it for you to focus your time, your money, and your efforts on. Yeah? So usually, I mean, this is where when you look at customer database or you're doing market research, that's why we have to do the larger sample in order to put people into these different buckets or personas. Yeah. So the other one then is, what sort of information? Remember, we talked about, I mentioned earlier that when it comes to building a customer persona, it's not just about their demographics. It's not just about their age. Knowing about their age group and their income and their gender is not enough for you to profile people. That is too broad. It doesn't give you enough depth into how they differ from one another. So you're going to have to figure out how much information are you going to need to have in order to flesh out each of the customer personas so that they are distinct from each other and that they give you enough reason for you to do your product positioning differently and for you to strategize and allocate your marketing spend smartly. Yeah. So in order to build, there are basically, I'd say there are two important ways. If you have a customer database already, I'd say you have a head start. Yeah. So if you already have a set of customers in a mailing list, or when you're on your online store, you've got the list of customers who have already purchased items from you, that is a good source of information because you know already that they are consumers of the product. So you have that good head start. Then you can build on that by asking and gathering more information from them. And that comes to the second point. So the second point, whether or not you have a customer database, probably you will have to do this. Have to do market research to a certain extent. Now, market research and the way that big firms do it, of course, is very expensive. And it usually serves a purpose only fit for that company itself. And then there are also other, I guess, more cost-effective ways. As for example, you want to, for example, to search for information and to kind of profile your customer or your audience. That's also a doable approach. But there are some other limitations also when you want to look at it just from an online perspective. There will be certain information that you probably will not be able to glean from their digital footprint. And you need to ask about their motivations, for example, their values. That's not something that you would be able to necessarily pick when you are looking for information online. But let's start first with a customer database. Out of curiosity, how many of you actually have businesses with a sizable, let's say a database of more than 500 customers? Anybody? Can you say, yes? Does anybody? Yes. Okay. Mega has. Does anybody not have? Okay. Does anybody not have a customer database yet? Okay. Some don't have a customer database, so some do. So in this case, let's say for those of you who do have a customer database, firstly, of course, your customer database will consist of people who only have purchased from your store. They are users of your brand. They are users of your product. What you may not see, then there are things that you may not see. First of all, you may not see the rest of the behavior of your target segment. You're only seeing how the people who have interacted with your brand are like. Yeah. So the rest of the people that you may target, you want to target may still be, in a sense, out of your view. They're still in your blind spot, so to speak. Now, there's another component also, which is basically the industry consumers or the product consumers. So while there are people who consume your brand, you may also see people, or you may not see the rest of the people who are consumers of the product, but have not come across your brand. But you may be interested in them, and you want to know how to tackle them as well. So this could be a different set of persona that you just haven't figured out how to reach out to. So there's a lot of blind spots when you're starting with your customers. And that's why the market research component is important, because you need to know more things that is still unknown to you. Most likely, if you have a customer database, you would have a phone number, you would have email address, you would have their name, maybe you have the transaction data. So you know what they have purchased from you, you know how they purchased, and you know perhaps where they came from. Right, so the media, which ads worked on this particular customer. But what you don't see are all these things that will flesh out the customer persona even more, such as their household composition. Does that have an impact on what you're selling and how you're selling to them? Their lifestyle preferences beyond their consumption or purchase pattern at your store. You don't see much about their other lifestyle preferences that may actually have an impact on whether they will continue to buy or not. Yeah. And then their media habits, other than which channel they came from, which online platform they came through. You're not going to know much about what else they consume, how else they consume their media. You won't know much about other brands that they associate with. And most importantly, and I think I mentioned this earlier, the values that they identify with. This is the sort of information that you will need to gather in order to be able to flesh out your customer persona more effectively. Okay, so, I see, somebody has below than 20 customers in your database. Now, if you have a very small customer database, and if it's a slow moving consumer good, which means, let's say, for example, you sell very high exclusive products, then that's fine, But if you're selling a more fast moving consumer good, something that actually tends to be purchased repeatedly, then you're going to need other data sources in order to build that customer persona. A customer database that's of 20 people may not, I won't say may not, it is definitely not enough for you to be able to expand your market further and say, okay, these are the people that I need to find more of. Yeah. Okay. So the next thing then is to look into market research. So market research can be done in many ways, like I mentioned. If you're looking at the larger organizations where they spend a lot of money on market research, definitely that's not accessible to everybody. So the other way, and this is where we come in, like I mentioned, is in using our platform, where we have already collected data on a quarterly basis from consumers of a panel of 2,000 consumers in Malaysia, 2,000 consumers in Thailand. So these are consumers that represent, these are respondents that represent consumers ages 20 to 69 in these two countries. And what we do is we send out quarterly surveys to them, and we ask them all sorts of questions relating to their consumption pattern, their interactions, their behavior, and their activities. And that means that we're able to look beyond any specific industry. We are able to look beyond any specific brand or any specific target segment. Our data encompasses all types of consumers. So any business, as long as they are interested in consumer behavior, they can take a look at the data and slice and dice it however they see it. So it's kind of, how we say it is, it's like a Rubik's Cube. So you can just twist and turn the Rubik's Cube to get a different combination that you're after. And I'm gonna show you a little bit on how that's being used. So this is a much quicker way, a much more accessible way compared to running your own market research, obviously. But if you have a sizable database, I do recommend first that you try and maximize your existing database, really pull in the data from there that you can start with. Now, our approach, the reason why we do it this way is when we have the data for all consumers, we're able to draw the connection between their consumption, let's say, for example, their food and beverage consumption with their leisure consumption and their fashion consumption, transport and mobility habits and behaviors, their media behavior, and so on and so forth. So All these are the data that we collect from our respondents, and we're able to see that connection and help to flesh out the persona more effectively. So this is how we do it. This is not how most typical market research is done, yeah, just so you know. So the time market research is not going to gather all this much information. Now, so in order to use this, what we've done on our platform, and I'm going to show you, is that we're also able to help you create these personas with just a click of a few buttons, and then export the data onto social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram automatically is included, and also TikTok. So if you have a Facebook or TikTok ads manager, this is going to be useful for you. You can choose to either do it manually, or you can just use our automated API already that just automatically connects to your Facebook or TikTok accounts. Yeah. So I'm going to show you basically what I mean with the persona analytics. Now this is our platform, Voyager. Okay, so this platform has a bunch of data. Just to give you a sense of how much data we're talking about, this is the vertical taxonomy. If I'm looking from the food and beverage perspective, oh wait, we were talking about sportswear, right? So I'm going to go back to sportswear. So let's go to fashion and accessories. Yeah. So under the fashion and accessories, we have all sorts, clothing. So these are all sorts of information and questions relating to sportswear purchase and sportswear consumption. All this data is available on our platform. But using all this data can be daunting, especially if you're new to using data. So what we've done to simplify this a little bit more is to put it in a system called Persona Analytics. It's essentially a dashboard that displays all the data, that summarizes the consumers that you're after, provided that you provide that you key in the criteria that you're interested in. And the criteria combination can be a set of behavior identity, identity and product, product and behavior. So essentially, if I were to go back to my slides earlier, is that when we're talking about product and identity, I think everybody is familiar. Product means whatever it is you're selling, and I'm going to give that sportswear as an example. And identity here obviously refers to demographics. Yeah? So the other component that I mentioned just now was behavior. This essentially is what we call behavior archetypes, which Maureen had mentioned that we're going to talk about it as well. So when it comes to behavior archetypes, this is a way of classifying consumers based on their consumption pattern. Not about the products that they use, but more of how they behave and how they use different types of products relating to that lifestyle or behavior. Yeah. So we are able to classify consumers based on their consumption and not just based on online data. This is all about their offline behavior, things that you may not necessarily be able to see. So there are about 27 behavior archetypes, but every individual is represented in different archetypes, which means each of us will fit into more than 2 archetypes at any given time, for sure. Yeah. So these are the 27 behavior archetypes organized according to what we call themes. Essentially, we just group them together for easy identification. So some behavior archetypes that fall into gastronomic foodie, for example, are relating to all sorts of food type behaviors. Yeah? Whether you're a cook, like Chef Me, or you like to try out different kinds of foods, or you're really into health, and you really like junk food. Now, one interesting thing to note is that you'll be surprised, nutritious me, and there's quite a significant overlap between people who are nutritious me as well as quick junk food me. Yeah. So it doesn't mean that if you're a nutritious me that you don't consume junk food at all. Not at all. Yeah. It actually can be, you can be both at the same time. But it is just a matter of how do you use this in order to identify the positioning that you as a merchant want as to the best of your advantage, to create the advantage for your product or for your service. Yeah? So these are all the behavior archetypes that are available. We're going to talk about this a little bit later on values and self-perception. Now, I want to show you now what we actually do with all this data in the persona analytics. I've already generated the persona analytics real quick for some of you so that it's easier for you to see straight away. Now, these are some personas that I've already created in advance. I have saved them so that it's easy to see. So we can filter this. So I want to see the behavior archetype that I've created on sportswear that is using identity and product criteria. So the criteria that I selected is sportswear, and this is all for females, yeah, for women. So what I click here will give you an overview. These are all curated data sets that we've selected from what we've collected already, and we present it in a series of charts. Yeah? So you can see that the charts are organized in demographics, lifestyle, media, shopping, brand. We're going to ignore the COVID-19 one for now, and also messaging, which I will come back to after that. Let's take a look first at what you can see here. You have a static counter here, which represents the entire consumer market, ages 20 to 69. This doesn't matter whether they're female or whether they're sportswear users. This is all consumers, yeah, not just the criteria that we selected. So just so you know, this is the criteria that is selected. You can change the criteria if you want or refine it further. So household income. So it's really a selection. So you can change the product as well through the list of the verticals, the category of clothing or non-clothing, and under clothing you have sportswear, underwear, inwear, and so on and so forth. Yeah? So this is just some of the example of the data that you can use to set your criteria. Once you set your criteria, and right now we're looking at ladies who purchase sportswear in Q1 2021. So this is the profile, demographic profile, and this is the size of the market of all the women who purchased sportswear between the ages of 20 to 69. And as you go down, you can see in terms of the household income breakdown, as well as expenditure, occupation breakdown, even down to the number of children that they have. Yeah? So you can see the number of children that they have, even household size, and down to what we call household archetypes, which means the kind of household that they live in. Whether they live in a nuclear family with a description here, or an extended family, which means multiple generations living under the same roof. You can see already the breakdown of that audience. Yeah. Then there's other information such as their lifestyle, and this is something that you can't gather. Probably is going to be difficult for you to gather, other than if you do market research and you interview customers. Yeah. So you can see straight away there are all this information, reasons for why people stay home, reasons for why they go out, and you see there's an equal number of people who there's half of them actually just prefer to stay at home, which means that half of the women who bought sportswear are just using it while they're at home, exercising in the comfort of their home. But of course, we know also it's because of the lockdown and whatnot in Malaysia, right? So you cannot really go out and exercise outdoors. So during Q1, most of them worked out only at home. Yeah? So we can see all this other information that describes their lifestyle preferences and so on and so forth. And you can go into the tab to see their media habits during Q1 2021, from free-to-air TV consumption to video and audio streaming consumption, even their social media consumption. Yeah? So you see a full list of all this data. And then, of course, there's some others where you can look at their shopping preferences, even, like I said, the brand affinity and brand association. So this already gives you a comprehensive view of what that audience is like. You can spend a bit of time to understand the data and make even comparisons. And I'm going to show you what I mean by comparing. Right now, we're looking at identity and product. If I want to look from a different perspective, and I want to look at it from the behavior and identity perspective. Now, this is a different perspective, but I'm looking at women who are interested in fitness. Yeah. So while earlier I looked at women who purchased sportswear, now I'm looking at women who are into fitness. And this is the criteria. I chose fitness me as the behavior archetype, and still women. So the difference here is, instead of using a product, I'm using behavior archetypes. So when we open this, we're going to see some differences, even in the composition of the market. Earlier, if you notice, the market was about 11% or so of women who purchase sportswear. But Fitness Me actually is higher, is a little bit higher, which suggests that not all women who purchase sportswear are Fitness Me people. Yeah? And not all the Fitness Me people or women actually purchase sportswear in Q1 2021. So you can see then that suggests that there is this other market. Not just people who are really into fitness, but there are people who are more casual users of sportswear. Yeah? And this already gives you an idea of how you can look into what best way to position your product. And as you go down, you can see also the differences in the household expenditure, occupation, some changes in behavior of lifestyle, media consumption, and you can make that comparison. Now, I want to touch on this tab called messaging before I show you what this messaging tab looks like. Let's go back to the slide here. So you can see we were talking about how consumers have this sense of self, right? So everybody aligns themselves with certain values based on their experiences, based on what they have gone through, or how they are raised, for example. So their interactions with people, what they read, what they're exposed to, all informs how they perceive themselves. So when we talked about behavior archetypes, it was really about what they do. But when it comes to values here, it's really about how they either perceive themselves currently or how they want to be perceived. And this is where it's important to see the distinction when you're talking about your different personas, because all of them have different motivations and want to be seen in different ways. Their value sense is like in this way, all these values here are organized, like similar to a color wheel, so to speak. So color wheels tend to be it's a gradation of one color to another color. So there are connections between one value to another value. So you will see that different groups of people may have more emphasis on some values, and therefore those values will be the best way for you to connect with that audience. So I'm going to show you now when we look at the messaging tab. So for example, this is the Fem Fitness Me, right? If I look at the messaging tab here, again, you will see this is the array of the values, how they are spread out according to this particular criteria, women who are into fitness. And you see that the top 3 messages. So what we do is we show you the top 3 recommended messages based on what is the highest for this particular group. So we can see that Explorer, Global Citizen, and Humanist are actually quite high. And remember, they are all next to each other. Yeah? Global Citizen, Humanist, and Explorer are side by side in the wheel that we saw earlier. So once we've identified these values, we can also pair it with the message that goes well with them. Now, this is not to say you use the message literally, but it's the spirit of the message that you can adapt to your communications, which means if you're talking to women in general who are into fitness, these are the 3 messages that you can utilize in your ad campaign, in how you brand your product, in the sales funnel as well, so that the user experience is always a reinforcement of the values that they hold dear, so to speak. Yeah. So one thing then that you can look at is you can refine this a little bit more if you want to. Let's say because you want to target different age groups, so you can prioritize. Let's say if you're going after the 30 to 39, just to give you a quick example, the 30 to 39 values change a little bit when you start drilling down into the specific age groups. Yeah. And if you're looking at the 20 to 29, you may see a different set of values as well. So that means that while if you're talking about the overarching message for all women, you're focusing on a certain brand, but when you're going at the direct engagement side, whether you're using different platforms of communication, then you're talking about utilizing different messages for the different audience. Okay, so we've covered that. Now I want to show you, I think the most important part is that how do you then use this for your Facebook targeting? Okay, so there are 2 ways. Basically, if you go back to, so let's go here, yeah, to the saved behavior archetypes, or sorry, the saved personas. You notice that there are these 2 icons. Essentially, it will connect to the Facebook account or the TikTok ads account that you have lah. So make sure you have that first. If you it won't, basically you need to have a Facebook ads account and a TikTok ads account in order to execute this. You can use but you can use the data for any other in other ways as well, for sure. Now there are 2 ways, like I mentioned. The first one is if you look at the data, if you spend a bit of time looking at the data and you pluck out what information is most relevant for you that you want to populate in your Facebook Ads Manager. That's one way of doing it. Yeah. Another way is if you just click on each of these buttons and you can connect to Voyager, connect Voyager to your Facebook account. So let's say, for example, I'm connecting here. Automatically, you can switch to whichever account. So as long as it's a business account or your personal account, but what's important is to make sure that it's an account that's connected to a Facebook Ads Manager, and then you choose the ad ID and you choose a campaign that you want to utilize. So either it's already an existing campaign that you've created, or you can create a campaign from here. My recommendation is always to create the campaign on FB Ads Manager first, because there are some things that we on FB Ads Manager that we would not be able to, I think the selection, we will not be able to make from this window lah, from this pop-up. So it's best that you set, for example, objectives and so on and so forth on FB Ads Manager first, and then choose that campaign from this pop-up box. Yeah. So I've already exported this. So just to show you what it looks like in the FB Ads Manager. So just now I showed you that it is the Fem, what was it called? Fem Fitness Me, right? So Fem Fitness Me, and I've sent it actually to this campaign called Athleisure. So this is the campaign that I've created, and these are the, a second. There we go. So these are the behavior archetypes and the personas that have been exported. Now, if you notice earlier on, there was only one persona, but what the system or what Voyager does is it calculates how many different ad sets you can create from that one persona that you've generated earlier. Yeah. And then what you can do from here is prioritize. Remember, it's about prioritizing. So you can take a look at which one you want to focus on by age group. So as you can see, you either want to go for the 20 to 29, or you want to go for multiple groups, but then you decide what your budget is going to be, and you adjust your budget accordingly based on the ad. So you can utilize this again. Of course, you can duplicate this and you can edit it a little bit if you want, and utilize it multiple times. The data doesn't need to be connected to Voyager anymore. Essentially, you've already exported the criteria and you can just start using it. Yeah. So let me just show you. There are some cases where if you use a different set of persona, you may not get up to 4 different ad sets. So in some cases, you may only generate 1 ad set. In some other cases, you will get only maybe 2 or 3. Yeah. So just to give you an example, a second. Never see. Yeah. Second, because I cannot see the screen, the tabs at the top. Okay. So now if I were to, let's say, not use this one because I've already exported it, and I want to go back to the lady sportswear. Remember the very first persona that I shared with you. So I want to export this to the same campaign. Yeah. So this is a different set of criteria. I choose athleisure again. 8. And this is exporting the lady sportswear persona. It's dividing it into how many different criteria that's available that can be converted into ad sets. So as I open my ads manager on the athleisure, as you can see, this was what we had created earlier. You've got 4 Fem Fitness Me ad sets, but when it comes to lady sportswear, there are 3. Yeah? So it really is a calculation on the basis of whether or not there is sufficient data or there is a sufficient size of audience that is meaningful enough. So it basically implies here that when it comes to the ladies sportswear, the 50 to 65 is not recommended lah, in a way from our data. It is not recommended that you target it. But if that is your own target, by all means, you can utilize that as well. The only thing is, of course, you have to key in the data manually. Yeah, you look into the persona and you pick out the details that's relevant to you and you populate your ad set with that information. So that is as simple as it goes. I know, okay, it may not be as simple for the people who are looking at this the first time, but as you know, practice makes perfect. So as you get used to utilizing this a lot more, usually then you get the hang of it. But it's simple in a way because what we do is we minimize the number of steps that people have to take to get all that information. Otherwise, in order for you to do that research, you have to figure out what questions you want to ask. Then you have to figure out who you want to ask these questions to. And then you've got to analyze the data, and you've got to collect that data and put it into something that is meaningful. So we've reduced all that effort for you to allow you to be able to just pull that data by a few clicks and then export it straight away, and it's actionable straight away for you to just execute with whichever campaign that you need. Yeah. So that essentially is how you can create persona analytics real quick. If you don't have data, if you don't have a customer database, but you need to understand and you need to profile the target audience that you're after, it's really simple. As you can notice, it's just simply selecting some criteria, making sure that you know these are the criteria that you're after. You can test out a few different criteria to see how different personas compare, and then you make the decision on which persona you want to focus on. So if you want to give this a try, you can do it. You just go to voyager.dattel.asia, and there is a try it for free button where you can sign up for a 7-day trial account. So you get to access Voyager and not just try out persona analytics. You can see also some of the other data that we have. But of course, that requires a little bit more help and assistance, I suppose, especially if you've never used data like this before. But of course, if you need a little bit of help, this is where, like I said, this is where I come in. So if you want to know more, you can also reach out to me. You can find me, you can connect to me on my LinkedIn, or we do have a business community as well that you can join to get support on your data-driven journey, especially if you're starting it at the very, very beginning. You can join our Dattel business community on Facebook. Look for it, join it. We provide a lot of tips and guidance, and we will share a little bit of data as well on some interesting findings and interesting insights that you can get from our platform Voyager. Yeah. And then I guess the rest of it is you can follow us. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, not TikTok yet lah. We're thinking about it. We're just not sure how we want to talk about data on TikTok and whether the audience is right or not lah. But definitely you can find us on our different social media platforms. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to guide you through this process and help you basically on your data-driven journey to become better marketeers. Okay? And that's it. Over to you, Laureen.
All right, absolutely super. We enjoyed your presentation so much. You guys, if you enjoyed it, please, please, please give her a round of applause in the chat box right now. Let's move on to our questions. We have quite a lot to go through.
Okay.
And let me see, what's our time like? Oh, okay, we have ample time, no worries. All right, so let's do, let me see. Okay, where do we start? All right. This one is from Karen. Now, Karen's question is, do you need to create a customer persona for a customer? Let me just read this question one more time. Okay, so is creating a customer persona mandatory to have a customer database? And how do you begin with no customer database to kickstart your customer persona?
Okay, so Karen, the data that we have does not require you having a database first. Yeah, the data is our data. So Dattel collects this data from a panel of respondents who are consumers. So in order for you to use our persona analytics, you don't need to have a customer database. You can start from there. So if you don't have a customer database, like it or not, you have to do your own market research lah. So Voyager kind of helps you to short circuit that process by, instead of collecting your own data and doing your own, running your own market research and finding the right respondents, to basically pulling all the information that we already have and find what is suitable for your business. So in order to, ultimately your customer database will be people who have converted lah, basically people who you managed to attract, people who have come visited your website or your other digital assets, or come visited your physical store, and they've purchased something or interacted in a way that allows you to capture their information. But that is the next step. If you don't have it yet, you have to, no other choice, you have to do some kind of market research.
All right, cool. Now she has a continuation to that question. So the continuation is, what's the benchmark or the average amount of records for customer database in order to create a customer persona?
Okay, I would say there is no real benchmark because it really depends on the kind of business. Like I said, If your business is very mass, which means you are selling a product that is really like, for example, like snacks, right? Maybe it is very mass and you don't really need to create multiple personas because you already know that a lot of people are going to buy. It's just a matter of you focusing on a location that you want to buy or price point. But if you have multiple different products, let's say you are in the retail business, for example, retail for sure, if you're selling different, like you've got beauty products, you also have home supplies, household supply products, then you do need to create a different customer persona. I would say, like I mentioned, if you only have 20 customers for an FMCG category, that is definitely not enough. I would say that maybe upwards of 100 you can start, but you also have to also keep checking back because as you're growing your customers, you are going to get different types of customers and you're going to see more differentiation between different personas. So that exercise of creating a persona is not something that you do just once. You do have to check in. And I would recommend, like if you're using your own database, to check in once a year because customer behavior does change, especially when it comes to FMCGs. Yeah. So their behavior changes, their brand loyalty, for example, can change because you're competing with a lot of other different brands and a lot of other different merchants. If you're a slower moving good, then chances are you don't need to update it so often, but also your customer base may not be as big. And you need to put in a little bit more effort to understand them so that you can offer them other products, for example, or you can provide them with value added services. So it varies. But I would say for FMCG, even for slow moving goods, you definitely need more than 100 customers in order to be able to profile them.
All right, that's really, really good advice. So I know you just addressed the amount for the sample survey. So not sure if you want to take this next question. The question is, hi Noor, is this survey, I think you must have run a survey just now during your presentation. So is this survey done on the same group of people quarterly? Is this sample size sufficient to represent the market trend? Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to give you, I don't know how many of you have done market research or worked with market research firms and all that before, but I'm going to give you a secret. Most market research, when they do the one-time market research, one, they will focus only on market centers, which is usually just KL, Penang, JB, if in Malaysia. And secondly, their sample size can be as low as 300, sometimes as low as 100. And the reason is because it's cost. So our sample is approximately 2,000 every quarter. The 2,000, we do have a core of the same respondents who come back, but also, of course, inevitable, there will be some attrition where some of the respondents leave and then there are new respondents come in. But essentially, we do have the same core that provides the data. But also, statistically speaking, when you have about a 2,000 sample size, even actually sometimes I think for 1,000 is pretty good already. I know there are some of the bigger market research firms that they maintain a 1,000 sample size. Not going to name names. Some of them start with an N and ends with a sin. But but basically, 1,000 sample size actually also can be good enough. Some people think, oh, a bigger sample size, I need 10,000, 20,000. But the reality is that when you're doing market research, more means more money. So if you're willing to spend that much money, by all means. But secondly, statistically, when you grow it to that extent, it doesn't add that much value anymore unless you really plan to go very granular. It means you want to go into the specific detail of, each household member, how does each household member consume this product? Then, of course, you need a bigger sample because you're asking for literally every household member as an example. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
It does. It does. It makes a lot of sense. Like suddenly when you break it down, like, yeah, like, usually we think that if you put a lot of money into it, it's going to yield the results, but not necessarily like you just said.
Yes.
So thank you.
To be honest, because my background is not, I started off not in a data background. I started in the media industry. So I was a storyteller. That's why I put storyteller. So I started in the media industry first, and it's all about marketing and storytelling. So data actually can be intimidating if you're talking to somebody who is very technical, who is, because they will come from that perspective. But at the end of the day, when marketeers want to use it, it is really like, what is good and useful for me? I don't need to know more than that. So we try to simplify. Same thing like what Zine was doing earlier. It's simplifying it and putting it in terms that is easier for people who don't have that level of knowledge or technical knowledge to understand, appreciate, and utilize.
Correct. I agree 100%. Okay, so we have this question from Chong Yong. So the question is, does these data information help B2B niche industries? And the question number 2 is, there are a lot of advices that you should do a minimum ad spend for the start. May I know what is the minimum spending and maximum spending amount? For example, is 60 ringgit a month good?
Okay. So, Chua Chongyong, the first question, I would need to know what sort of B2B niche industry you're talking about. At the end of the day, the data is about consumer. So when we say consumer here, we're looking at consumer behavior of consumer related goods. Yeah. So we're not talking about how people in the construction industry use construction materials, for example. So we're talking about the things that we as regular consumers utilize and interact with on a daily basis, on a regular basis. So it depends on what kind of niche industry you're talking about. Maybe it can help, maybe it cannot. I don't know. If you're a venture capitalist, it could help now. But but if it's in an industry that is kind of like quite distant, quite distant from consumer behavior, I'm not so sure. I think we would need to have a more direct conversation or one-on-one conversation to be able to answer that question. The second one, on minimum ad spend, to be honest, on the digital marketing side, I am not the best person to advise. So I also don't want to tell you what is the best minimum ad spend. It depends on your business again. It depends on where you're spending and whether your audience is there. That is what I can say based on my knowledge from the perspective of data. But if you want more specific answers, you can always, like I said, join our Dattel business community. There might be some other experts there who can answer this question for you.
All right, cool. So this one is from Kumara Guru. The question is, he's got 3 parts actually for this. So question number 1 is, for home-based food startups, how does this tool provide the opportunity or advantage in terms of investment? Number 2, how frequent is the data refreshed and updated? And 3, are SOCMED filtering included in this tool? Terima kasih. Majulah digital marketing untuk negara.
Okay, Kumara Guru, the first question, I would say it depends on how you want to utilize the data, what kind of decisions you need to make for your home-based food startup. Are you looking, like I said, are you looking to identify your audience? Are you looking to identify where the opportunities are? Are you looking to observe trends and seeing where else you can go? So I would suggest, if you want, you can connect with me directly and we can talk a little bit more about what your needs are, and I can actually kind of walk you through a little bit on some of the other data that's available on Voyager. That's my advice to you. But essentially, if you are looking at understanding the market size, understanding market opportunities, and understanding the persona, and also how you want to message to your audience, this is definitely a tool that you should invest in, I would say. Because to be honest, I'm not sure if there are any other tools that can provide the depth of information that can help you get started pretty quickly as Voyager. I'm not bragging or anything like that, but that's just the fact at this stage. Second question. Data on a quarterly basis. So what I showed you just now is quarter 1, 2021. We are about to update the data with quarter 2. We are in the middle of collecting data for quarter 3. So yes, the data is very frequently updated. You can have access to it and see the latest that's updated. I mean, to be honest, some of the platforms don't update as often. Even marketing agencies and advertising agencies that have their own in-house tools sometimes only update this kind of data on a yearly or even 18-month basis. Yeah, but we know that because of COVID, things have changed so much. There's a lot of volatility. What does the reopening of the economy mean, for example, for some businesses that have already gone the digital route? That's just food for thought. So these are things that we want to look out for, and it's useful to see more frequent as it goes along. With the third question, when it comes to social media, we don't collect social media data. What we do is we're collecting data on their general social media consumption. So we don't look at what topics people talk about on social media. That is just, I think that's kind of offering something that's already available out there. There are many other organizations and tools that are available that can do that much, much better already. So we don't look at social media topics, social media analysis. However, one of the things that we are going to be introducing very soon is their digital, what we call digital lifestyle, which means we look at the app usage and app behavior of our panelists. So not just their social media consumption, but also all the other digital tools that they may be using on their mobile devices. So that's the other angle that we're looking at. Hope that answers your questions.
Okay, we're running short of time, so let's just squeeze in one last one.
Sure.
So this one is from Boon Yong Tan. The question is, I am a micro skincare brand. Now, besides demographics, what 5 key questions should I ask my existing customers so I can use info to target potential Facebook buyers?
Wow, you're really putting me under pressure with 5 key questions some more. Usually I cannot answer this on the fly. So I would need a bit of time to assess and ask you questions first. But I mean, in terms of skincare brand, obviously you're looking at whether or not people, the frequency of using skincare, what their concerns are with their skincare, what other brands of skincare that they are currently using, and perhaps what sort of activity and lifestyle that may be related to the type of brand and solutions that your skincare actually provides. So you're trying to validate, in a sense, that there are people who need your product because your product serves these kinds of benefits. But at the same time, you're looking also at their behavior and understanding whether they are going to be dedicated to using the product and willing to use and come back repeatedly to purchase the product for continued usage. So that's some of the example.
Very, very good advice. Thank you so much for answering this question under pressure. I can understand that sometimes, the questions that come in, the questions that come in like suddenly take you by surprise. Like, oh, okay, the process.
Yeah, exactly.
But we have to wrap things up right now. We still have, I think, about 2-3 more questions in the Q&A right now. So if you could answer those at your own time after we end this session, that would be wonderful. But Noorhaina, right now, I just want to thank you so much for your time, your input. I was looking through and like following your presentation. It was absolutely detailed. And I wanted to say thank you for taking the time to really go into the nitty gritty, and to just give us everything on your plate today. It was an absolute joy talking to you. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being a part of Marketing Fest Asia 2021. Please stay on for our last presentation if you like. You're more than welcome to. But for now, I wish you well and hopefully I'll see you soon.
Thanks. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for listening.
All right. You're most welcome. Thanks so much for being here. Bye.
Exabytes. Grow your business online.